Hello students, so today we will be covering our chapter number 1 of Flamingo, the last lesson. It is written by Alphonse Daudet. So first of all, let's see about the author. So Alphonse Daudet was a French novelist and short story writer. The last lesson is set in the days of the Franco-Prussian War, in which France was defeated by Prussia, led by Bismarck. Prussia then consisted of what now are the nations of Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria. In this story, the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine have passed into Prussian hands. Read the story to find out what effect this had on the life at school. So the last lesson, it's about the story when Prussia conquered France and the French language was banned in the schools and only Germany was to be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. So these are the two districts. This story, we can say this lesson, it is a recapitulation and a nostalgia. The author is remembering, ठीक है, वो हमें याद करके बता रहा है ये जब वो छोटे थे तब की बात है, and अब वो बड़े हो गए हैं. इट्स अ काइंड ऑफ recapitulation. एंड इट इज़ सिमिलर टू द पोम माई मदर एट 66 जो हम पढ़ेंगे. माई मदर एट 66 उसकी जैसे ही है. उसके अंदर भी पोएट अपनी मदर को रिकॉल कर रही होती, कॉल करते हुए वो पोएम लिखती है. लाइकवाइज द ऑथर इज recapitulating his memories and then writing the lesson. Clear? So let's see what are the themes in the chapter. So first one is linguistic chauvinism, that how one language dominates the other language, like Germany was being imposed on the French. ठीक है, so this is linguistic chauvinism, the belief when one consider one's language superior than others. So this is called linguistic chauvinism. Clear? So superior ये वाला, that one's language is superior to that of others. Clear? The first theme is linguistic chauvinism, and then the second theme is it brings out the human tendency to postpone the learning of things, feeling there is plenty of time to do so. So पुटिंग ऑफ थिंग्स, प्रोकास्टिनेशन की थीम को भी ये हमें बताता है कि कैसे जो लोग हैं वो दे आर ऑलवेज पुटिंग ऑन थिंग्स. ठीक है, एंड दे थिंक दैट दे हैव प्लेंटी ऑफ टाइम टू डू सो. सो इन दिस चैप्टर वी विल बी स्टार्टिंग अबाउट द चाइल्ड नेम फ्रांस, हाउ ही पुट ऑन हिज लेसन्स ऑन लर्निंग, कि देयर इज plenty of time, I will learn it tomorrow. Like this he put off the things. Now let's read the chapter. So the last lesson, it is a first person narrative. एक first person narrative है, author जो है वो ही लिख रहे हैं और वो अपनी एक part of life हमें बता रहे हैं. So I started for school very late. तो I कौन है? France. I started for school very late that morning and was in a great dread of a scolding. Dread is in a great fear of scolding, especially because M. Hamill had said that he would question us on participles. So participles, you all know, I think so, we have started this. Verb plus ing जो होते हैं words like swimming, drinking. So ऐसा उनको बोला गया था learn करने के लिए, and he didn't prepare a word of them. For a moment I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. So for a moment he thought that कि मैं स्कूल ही नहीं जाता हूँ और मैं इधर उधर चल जाता हूँ. It was so warm, so bright. और वो डिस्क्राइब करें इतना अच्छा वेदर था उस दिन. The birds were chirping at the edge and in the open field back of the sawmill. Sawmill क्या होती है? Factory where timber was chopped. The Prussian soldiers were drilling. They were doing their military practice. It was all much more tempting than the rule of participles. तो ये सारी चीज़ें जो भी है ये सब बहुत ज़्यादा tempting थी rather participles पढ़ने के. But he had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. He resisted all these things and he hurried to school because he was late. Now when I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in the front of the bulletin board. So there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. क्या होता है? सॉफ्ट बोर्ड जहाँ पर न्यूज़ वगैरह वगैरह लग रही होती है. आपके स्कूल्स वगैरह में भी होता होगा सॉफ्ट बोर्ड या नोटिस बोर्ड. फॉर द लास्ट 2 years all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft. तो वहीं पर ही सारी बैड न्यूज़ आती है क्योंकि जो वॉर चल रही थी उसके सारे रिजल्ट्स वगैरह थे वो सब वहीं आते थे. नाउ ही थॉट ना व्हाट कैन बी द मैटर, अब क्या मैटर है. सो ही थॉट, बट ही वॉज इन वेरी मच हरी. सो ही hurried and didn't stop there. The blacksmith watcher who was there with his apprentice is a trainee or assistant. Watcher ये एक name है. He called after me, don't go so fast Bab, you will get to your school in plenty of time. Bab means little boy. Bab का क्या मतलब होता है? Little boy. Clear? Now I thought he was making fun of me and reached M. Himmel's little garden all out of breath. So M. Himmel ये उनके टीचर का नाम है जो उन्हें फ्रेंच पढ़ाते हैं. He hurried to school and reached to M. Himmel's little garden. Now he is describing the scene at the school. So usually क्या होता है, whenever the school begins, there is a great bustle. Bustle is commotion. बहुत ज़्यादा noise आ रही होती है, बहुत ज़्यादा noise रहती है, which could be heard out in the streets. और बहुत दूर से ही वो सुनाई दे जाता है. But today there was no opening, no sounds. Clear? कैसे कैसे sounds आती है. So lessons were repeated in unison. साथ में एक साथ गा रहे हैं, very loud, with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was all so still. I had counted on the commotion to get my desk without being seen. So he had counted. उन्होंने सोचा था कि क्लास में बहुत noise, hustle bustle होगा, so he will quietly go to his seat and sit down. But there was no commotion. All were still silent, and all were already in their seats. Everything was quiet as Sunday morning. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places. So they all were in their places. Himmel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed, how I was embarrassed, and how frightened I was. So he was very much frightened and embarrassed because he has counted upon the commotion, but there was no commotion in the class. All were still silent on their seats. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I got a little over my fright. So when he got a little control over his fear, he saw that a teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap, all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and prize days. So this is the description of Emil, though how he was dressed up beautifully. In his best attire he was dressed. और इसके अलावा पूरा स्कूल जो था वो बहुत ही स्ट्रेंज एंड सोलम लग रहा था. द थिंग दैट मोस्ट सरप्राइज्ड फ्रांस वाज दैट द बैक बेंचेस, जो कि हमेशा ही खाली रहती थी, दे वर नाउ फिल्ड. टुडे दे वर फिल्ड. ऑल द विलेज मेंबर्स वर सिटिंग देयर, लाइक ओल्ड हॉजर with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several other besides. So they all were seated on the back seats. Everybody looked sad, and the hawser had brought an old primer. So old primer is a grammar book, an elementary primer book. Thumb is damaged at the edges, and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. While I was wondering about it all, Emil mounted. He went up his chair, and in the same grave, serious and gentle his mild tone which he had used to me, said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." So these words were a thunderclap. They were a loud crashing sound of thunder. It's a metaphor. They were shocked, and these were very much unexpected words. So what a thunderclap these words were to me. Oh, the wretches, oh, the unhappy people, that was what they, German, had put up at the town hall. So this was what it was written at the notice board, that the notice had come that they had to teach only Germany in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine because Prussia had conquered them. So this was the last French lesson of Emil, and he wanted all of the people to be very much attentive. Now Franz is thinking, his last French lesson, why? I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn anymore. I must stop there then. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs, or going sliding on the Saar. Saar is the frozen river. So now Franz is regretting that मैंने इसे क्यों करा? Why did I put on the things? My books that had seemed such a nuisance, such a burden a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints, were old friends now that I couldn't give up. And M. Himmel too, the idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. So this all was a sense of grief and loss for France. Okay. Poor man. So this is used for teacher. It was in honor of this last lesson that he wore his best dress. ठीक है तो उन्होंने अपने लास्ट लेसन के ऑनर में सबसे अच्छा ड्रेस पहना था. So now Franz understood that why the old men of the village, they were sitting there in the back of the room. It was because they were also sorry. वो भी बहुत ज़्यादा sorry थे that they did not gone to school anymore. It was their way of thanking a master for his 40 years of faithful service. So they were thanking to their master. So it was a sense of regret in the villagers that they did not pay attention to their mother tongue and not sending their children to school. वो लोग कभी कभार उनको काम वगैरह में एंगेज कर लेते थे so that they could earn a little more. ठीक है. Now while I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. So now Franz's name was called. Now it was my turn to recite, but Franz did not knew about a word of that, right? So but I got mixed up in the first words and stood there holding on my desk, and his heart was beating. I heard M. Himmel say to me. So M. Himmel say that I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. आपको बहुत बुरा लग रहा होगा. See how is, but कैसा है? Every day we have said to ourselves, I have plenty of time. I will learn it tomorrow. So you all were procrastinating things, postponing things, and now you see where we have come out. Now where we have ended. There's a great trouble with Elsie. She puts off learning to tomorrow. So she is personification. Elsace को personify किया गया था. It's not talking about Elsace but the people of Elsace. ठीक है. She puts off learning till tomorrow. Now those fellows Germans out there will have the right to say to you, how is it you pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language? But you're not the worst, poor little Franz. We have all a great deal to reproach, to criticize, blame ourselves with. So they all are now blaming that they all are blaming themselves. Now let's see. Now how is that your parents, they were anxious enough to have you learn. They prefer to put you on to work to earn a little more. ये पेरेंट्स की बात बता रहे हैं. फिर हैव आई नॉट ऑफन सेंट यू टू वाटर माय फ्लावर्स. फिर वो खुद की गलती बता रहे हैं कि मैंने तुम्हें अपने पानी डालने के लिए नहीं भेजा फ्लावर्स वगैरह पे. देन जब वांटेड टू गो फॉर फिशिंग, ही गेव देम अ हॉलीडे. देन फ्रॉम वन थिंग टू अनदर, M. Himmel went on to talk of the French language, saying it was the most beautiful and the most logical language. So M. Himmel was appreciating their language, that it is the most beautiful, the most logical, the most clearest language that we must guard, we must protect our mother tongue, and we must never forget it, because when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. जब तक हमारे पास हमारी मदर टंग हमारी सेफ है, हम तब तक उस जो राज से फ्री हो सकते हैं. ठीक है. तो हमें इसको गार्ड करना होगा, हमें इसे प्रोटेक्ट करना पड़ेगा. देन ही ओपन द ग्रामर एंड रेड एज अ लेसन. तो फिर उन्होंने अपनी बुक खोली एंड देन उन्होंने अपना लेसन पढ़ाया. नाउ इट ऑल सीम सो इजी. आई थिंक टू दैट आई हैड नेवर लिसन सो केयरफुली. या तो इतने अच्छे से फ्रांस ने कभी सुना नहीं, या फिर इतने पेशेंस से कभी एम हिमल ने पढ़ाया नहीं. तो दिस लास्ट लेसन एवरीवन अंडरस्टूड एवरी सिंगल वर्ड ऑफ द लेसन. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Himmel had new copies for us written in a beautiful round hand, France Alsace, France Alsace. So, it was a token of love and remembrance to his students. That's why they distributed new copies, a token of love and remembrance. They looked like little flags. They were floating everywhere in the schoolroom. Now, the class was so silent that only sound was to be heard was of the scratching of pen and paper. Clear? The littlest ones, the youngest students of class, they worked right on tracing their fish hooks as if that was French. On the roof, the pigeons cooed very low, soft murmuring sound. And I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German? Even the pigeons, it is a metaphor, it is sarcasm and criticism, that how they are forcing their language on French. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw Emil sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing. As if wanted to imprint in his mind that how everything looked in his little school room. Fancy, for 40 years he had been there in the same place with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. Just like that, only the desks and benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hop vines, creeper and climbers, they planted himself twisted about the windows. Now the sound of moving trunks, packing of trucks were there, so the sound was heard, for they must leave the country next day, because they had to leave the country next day. They lived in school. Okay, but he had the courage to hear every lesson after the writing. We had the lesson, and the babies chanted their ba, baby, boo, boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser, he was wearing his spectacles and holding his primer in both hands, and he was spelling the letters. You could see that he was too crying. His voice trembled, shaken with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. Oh, how well I remember it, the last lesson. So बहुत अच्छे से जो था उनको याद था उनका last lesson. All at once the church clock struck 12. Then the angelus, the midday prayers in the Roman Catholic Church. At the same moment, the trumpets of Prussia, victory of Germans or Prussians over the French. Returning from drill sounded under our windows. M. Hemmel stood up, very pale in his chair. I never saw him look so tall, reflecting his faith and confidence that their children will guard their language and protect their language. My friend said he, I, but something choked, blocking his throat, him. And he could not go on, and he could not spoke. So he turned to blackboard and took a piece of chalk, and with all his strength, by gathering all his strength, might, courage, he wrote as large as he could, Vive la France, which means long live France. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall. Without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. The school is dismissed, you may go now. So with his hand, he gestured that you may leave now. So this is a recapitulation, a nostalgia, old memories are there in this chapter. So इसमें आपके पास दो character sketch भी आ सकते हैं. M. Hamill, he was very much emotional, dedicated teacher. He was a stickler. He was very much a disciplinarian, motivator, and epitome of a true Frenchman. He was a true Frenchman. And France, he was the boy, was the narrator. He was carefree, conscientious, initially wished to bunk school. He woke up to the beauty of mother tongue, his French, quite late. So he woke up very much late. So basically in this chapter, we learned about linguistic chauvinism, that how one should protect their language. And the other thing was not to postpone things. Clear? So this was all about the chapter. If you like the video, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.